Welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about slope-intercept form. So one important thing in slope-intercept form is the y-intercept. So notice it has the letter y in it, and that is where the line crosses the y-axis. And we always write a y-intercept as 0, comma, the number. So that number is where it's crossing the y-axis. So that number is your y-intercept. So first we're going to see this on a table. So we've got this equation, y equals 2x minus 3. So when you have a table, you can take these x values and plug them in for that x to determine what y is, and that'll give you the points to graph. So I'm going to take my equation, so y equals 2, and then instead of the x, I'm going to do parentheses and plug in this number for the x. So negative 1 minus 3. So either in my head or in my calculator, I'm going to solve that. So that's negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. So what that tells me is one point is a negative 1, negative 5. So I could graph negative 1 in the x direction, negative 5 in the y direction. And that is that point. Then I'm going to take the next x value, so 0, and I'm going to plug it in. So 2 parentheses 0 minus 3. So 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So that is the point 0, negative 3. So I'm going to go to 0 on the x-axis, down 3 on the y-axis, put a point. Finally, I'm going to use the x as 1. So I'm going to do 2 parentheses 1 minus 3. So 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So I'm going to graph the point 1 in the x direction, negative 1 in the y direction. And those are my 3 points. So to graph a line, you do actually need to draw the line through the points. So after you graph them, draw a line. And it should have arrows on the end because that is an equation that's going to go forever. So what is the slope of that line? So that's what we were looking at last class. So slope is when you count how much is the change in y over the change in x, or the rise over run. So pick one point on the left. So I'm going to pick my leftmost point, and from that point, I'm going to go to the next point. So we are going up 2 and then over 1. So my slope is 2 over 1, or that simplifies to 2. Then the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So that's my blue point. So that point right there is the y-intercept. And that is the point 0, comma, negative 3. So let's try one more like that. So we've got an equation. This is g of x. We haven't learned that yet. So if you just want to cross it off and write y equals, that's totally fine. It means the same thing. So we are going to do y equals negative 1/2. And now we're plugging in negative 2. So parentheses negative 2 plus 5. So negative 1/2 times negative 2 is positive 1, plus 5 is 6. You can just type it into your calculator. So I'm going to graph negative 2 in the x direction, positive 6 in the y direction. And then I'm going to plug in 0. So y equals negative 1/2 times 0 plus 5. So 0 plus 5 is 5. So I could graph the point 0, 5. And finally, plug in 2. So y equals negative 1/2 times 2 plus 5. So that's negative 1 plus 5 is 4. So my final point is 2, 4. So once we have 3 points, we're going to draw a line through them and put those arrows on the end. All right, the slope. So I'm going to pick the leftmost point and go to the next point. So I'm going to go down 1 over 2. So down 1 was negative 1, over 2 was 2. So my slope, since it's y over x, is negative 1 over 2. And then my y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis. So that is right there. So that's your y-intercept. So that is at the point 0, comma 5. Ooh, okay. Something you might have noticed from this is that this slope of 2 matches the 2 in the equation. Same here. The slope of negative 1/2 matches the negative 1/2 in the equation. And my y-intercept of negative 3 matches the negative 3 in the first equation. And in the second equation, the y-intercept of 5 matches the plus 5 in our equation. So that is why the equation is called slope-intercept form, because the thing with the x, the number with the x, is the slope, and then the number without the x is the y-intercept. So it's got a slope and it's got an intercept. So what this equation looks like is it's y equals mx plus b. So the m, that's the slope, and the b is the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is always written 0, comma, whatever that b number is. So if we look at that in a few equations without even graphing them, we can just look at this equation and I can say, ooh, the number with the x, that's my slope. Ooh, the number behind it that doesn't have the x, that's my y-intercept. So for the slope, it's 3. And the y-intercept, be careful, if there's a minus sign, you're going to keep the minus sign. So we're going to write it as 0, comma, -5. Ooh, 4 looks a little bit different. The x is second, but the number with the x is still your m, and the number without the x is still the y-intercept, so that's your b. So slope, it's going to keep that -2 with it, so it'll be -2, and then our y-intercept is 0, comma 1. 5 looks a little bit different. 5 doesn't have any numbers, but if you have an x, hopefully you know the invisible number in front of it is a 1. And if there's no plus something behind it, the number that represents nothing is 0. So I know my slope is the 1 because that's with the x, and then my b or the y-intercept is what we're adding to it, so that's a 0. So my slope is 1, my y-intercept is 0, 0. All right, we've got one more page with slope-intercept. So this one, we're actually going to graph it. So we're putting it all together. So first we're identifying the slope here is 1/4, and my y-intercept is 0, comma 2. So whenever you graph lines, we're always going to start at the y-intercept. So that's where we're going to graph first. So you can either write start or graph first. So I'm going to graph the point 0, 2. And then from there, I'm going to do my slope. So remember, slope is change in y over change in x. So this is telling me I'm going to go 1 in the y direction and 4 in the x direction. And remember, we're going to go from the left to the right. So I'm going to go up 1 and then positive 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then up 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. To continue that pattern, I could also go down and then to the left 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I could do it again, down 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And those points are all on this line. They have a slope of 1/4. So if I went to the leftmost point, I would be going up 1 over 4 to get from point to point. So once you have at least 3 points, you're going to draw a line through them. All right, let's try another one. So here we've got the slope is -2/3. And my y-intercept is 0, comma, -5. So make sure you're keeping that minus sign with the 5. So we are going to start at -5 on the y-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for my slope this time, we've got -2 is my y, and then +3 is the x. So we're going to go down 2 and then +3. So I'm going down 2, +3. Down 2, +3. Or I could go up 2 to the left 3 to continue that pattern. So anytime you have a negative slope, it's going to be going down from left to right, and positive slopes go up from left to right. So looking at another one, my slope is -2, and my y-intercept is 0, comma 3. So we're going to begin at B, so begin at our y-intercept. So we'll start at 3. And then for my, oh goodness, for my y over x, I'm missing the over x. So if you could put any number below it, you could always put a 1 underneath another number. So anytime you need a fraction, just put a 1 underneath it. So we have a -2 and a +1. So we're going to go -2, so down 2, and then +1 to the right. Down 2, +1. Or we can go up 2 to the left, up 2 to the left. And then draw our line. Finally, for our last one, ooh, that x doesn't have a number in front of it, so we're going to put the invisible 1 there. So our slope is 1, but I want it to be a fraction, so I'm going to put a 1 underneath it. And then my y-intercept is 0, -4, because it has that minus sign. So we're going to start where y is -4, and then my slope is 1 over 1. They're both positive, so we're going up 1 to the right 1, up 1 to the right 1. Or I could go down to the left to continue the pattern. Finally, they want us to write the equation for each linear function. So they're just basically wanting me to write the equation in slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b. So we're going to start off always with y equals, and the m is our slope, and the b is the y-intercept. So I'm going to plug in the 4 for the m, put the x next to it, and then since this one is a -2, I'd write -2. And that's slope-intercept form. For the next one, they've given us a graph, so you're going to have to identify the m and the b. So my m, where we go from left to right, so I start on the left and I go up 2, 1, 2, 3. So up 2 over 3, so my slope is 2 over 3. And the b is where it's hitting the y-intercept, so the y-axis, so that is at 2, so b is at 2. So our equation would be y equals 2/3 x, and that's a +2, so +2. Finally, this one, they told us the slope, they told us the y-intercept, so that's my m and b. So y equals -1/2 x plus 3. And that is slope-intercept form. I hope that was helpful, and good luck.